Hey, what's up, everybody? Hope y'all are well. I'm back. I did a little live earlier, but I wanted to come back today and do another live because, I've just been watching what's been happening in Chicago with Mayor Lori Lightfoot and her attempt to cover up the video of a sister being brutalized by the police. And I wanted to connect this to just what everything that's been going on this year, right? I mean, Black people are constantly bombarded about voting, and usually voting 9 times out of 10 means that vote for the Democrats. And we're told that representation matters. Representation should be what we're aiming for. However, we're never encouraged um, to get involved beforehand, to get involved in terms of creating the actual platform or even being encouraged to include and lobby for the things that actually matter to us. And a couple of things have come up this week. This is real talk. You know what I mean? So I got to keep it all the way 100 with you. A couple of things I've seen come up this week. There's a Georgia Senate runoff race that everybody is talking about because I guess the Senate, the control of the Senate hangs in the balance of that race in Georgia for two Senate seats. So there's a lot of money being pumped down there. So much money. I mean, I would encourage folks to go back and look at how much money is spent in voting. And when you look at the economic conditions of our community, it's very bad, and it's something that bothers me because it's like we'll spend money on voting, but we won't spend money on the actual people who need the support. We have Democrats in Congress who have participated as well, including Nancy Pelosi, in holding up more direct payments to families during this pandemic. We've only received one $1,200 check, and most people like to characterize that as Trump's fault or Republicans' fault. But here today, I want us to think about and start talking more about the complicity with white supremacy that both major parties are about. I really want us to have a real conversation about that. And you can't get away from it. Like, I'm not going to sit here all night, and just name all of the things, that Democrats as well. And just so you know, I'm going to talk about Democrats tonight because usually Black people get mad. They be like, well, what about the Republicans and what they going to do? Yeah, but we don't vote for Republicans. We vote for Democrats 9 times out of 10. So why are we spending time talking about them? Clearly, we're clear, right, on what the Republicans represent. I talk about the Democrats because we seem to either be unclear or politically immature, or we allow people to tell us we don't have a choice. Something's wrong, right? Because Malcolm was talking about this 60 years ago about us not getting what we need in terms of, voting. We're not getting what we need. Our conditions are continuing to deteriorate. But back to Lori Lightfoot and Black misleadership. I've been having these conversations up and down social media, lots of times in person and everything like that, about Black complicity and oppression of Black people. There was an article released this week about single family homes in DC have surpassed $1 million, right? This is the impact of gentrification. And it seems as though Black people aren't making the connections that the gentrification that's happening in Atlanta, in Oakland, and San Francisco, and all of these major hubs that used to be Black cities, Detroit, right? Atlanta, Washington, D.C., all of these major cities that used to be Black hubs, Black cities, have been systemically, meaning through policy or the lack thereof, pushing Black people out for the last couple of decades. That hasn't been Republicans, y'all. Right? Like, let's just deal with what's hard. I get it. Like, that's hard for people to think about, right? When we think about Philadelphia and we think about the move bombing, right? When we think about who ordered that bombing of that Black family, it was a Black mayor, right? A Democrat, right? Like, so we have to merge our thinking with reality. And I think then, we can begin to make the necessary strategies and plans to do what we need to do for ourselves. That's really where it has to be at this moment, you all. I don't support voting just to be voting. I can't do that. Not in good faith, not knowing and seeing all the evidence that I've seen, not through all of my own personal experience of the advocacy and organizing work that I've done in communities in Ohio and now here in Maryland. There's no way I can continue to just advocate, just blanket support. And it's really actually almost time to like start calling some of these people who do that enemies. You know what I'm saying? And I actually view the Democratic Party in the same ways that I view the Republican Party. Neither of them have demonstrated, from my perspective and in my opinion, a willingness to do what needs to be done to improve the material conditions of Black people in this country. In fact, Black people's material conditions continue to deteriorate over and over and over again, no matter who's in power. And even when someone who is running, even on a Democratic platform, these are people known as progressives. You even see Democrats, the mainstream or the party elite or the people who are connected to the billionaires, like start making the connections. You'll see they'll come out of the woodwork to torpedo their campaigns, right? That happened to Bernie Sanders in 2016, and it also happened to Bernie Sanders in 2020 as well. I mean, the Democrats actually admitted to torpedoing his campaign in 2016. And that is because he was going to implement higher taxes on Wall Street, higher taxes on billionaires. He was going to implement policies that would economically improve the material conditions of our people almost immediately. And we're at a point, and this was before the pandemic. Can you imagine how bad it is now in a pandemic? This was before the pandemic. And you saw the Black Misleadership class, even during the primary, promote Joe Biden. We saw that with Jim Clyburn, promote Joe Biden, the actual author of the crime bill, who had tried to run for president twice before, but was too racist then, right? Of course, Obama picked him to be his running mate so that he could get more white votes and more white centrist, really corporatist, conservative Democrats. And let's have a conversation about, the so-called white centrists. Most of the white centrists, if we're honest, they're really economically Republican, but they're probably so-called liberal on social issues. So they're probably these are probably people, who are economically like, I don't believe in reparations, F Black people, but I am an LGBT person and I believe in abortion, so I vote for Democrats. But doesn't mean that they are not actually conservative on other issues that may be beneficial to us. So we have to start thinking about these things and why certain people are on certain tickets. We have to understand that white LGBT people are also racist, and many of them are very racist and anti-Black. And so I just think it's time for Black folks and even all really oppressed people, because both of these parties are corporate parties. When you look at who Wall Street was betting on for president, it wasn't Trump. despite the popular belief that Republicans are the money people, the Republicans are the conservatives and the hawks on the budget and all of that, Wall Street wanted Joe Biden. And they funded his campaign. It was not a people-powered campaign it was not a people-powered campaign like Bernie Sanders was. And, I am going to actually pull up an article to prove that to you. Was funded, by Wall Street, and he was their pick. And so, I don't want people to think, that I'm making up things. And so let me just go ahead and put up this CNBC article, just so you all know that this is a reputable website. So people don't have to worry about saying, well, that's not a reputable website. There's all kinds of things, people will bring up not to deal with reality. But let's just kind of just go ahead and take a look so people can know that I'm not actually making up things. I like this little tool, being able to share your screen. So here we go. Wall Street spent over $74 million to back Joe Biden's run for president. $74 million. How much of that could have gone directly to families if these people were paying their taxes, right? Do you think that these people supported Bernie Sanders? Of course not. They didn't support Bernie Sanders. They're not going to support somebody who's going to actually tax them and, make sure their wealth, and it's not theirs. I mean, certainly there's labor involved in that. But Wall Street placed a big bet, on the president. So, there's lots of money involved in politics because of a Supreme Court decision called Citizens United, and you can go and do your own research on that. But I'm just sharing this so that we can stop having these immature conversations about who's good and who's bad. It's not that simple. It's very much more nuanced. We also have to be careful with the people in our own community who look like us, who will throw us under the bus. They're lining their pockets. There are many so-called social justice organizations and Black political elites who are on your mainstream news telling you to get out and vote, and they're not talking about actual issues. And that's sickening to me at this juncture. There's so many people who are hurting. There's so many people who have been pushed into homelessness. People are dying, right? People are hurting all over the place. The hunger, right? People standing in lines at food banks. We should not tolerate another political candidate coming to us with the same message that they came to us with a couple of years ago or even a year ago. It's intolerable at this point. And so that is why I don't support any of the two or any of the four candidates who are running for the Senate and any of the endorsed candidates from the Democrats in Georgia. There were other people who were running, right? But you have to sign on to the Democratic Party platform to a lot of things, which brings up, there was an article that I saw that some Black pastors in Georgia, which, as you all know, is the South, said that Raphael Warnock needed to pull back his talk or his inclusion of abortion rights in his campaigning, saying that that was a problem for parishioners in the Black church. Listen, Black people, some Black people have always had a different view on abortion rights. Just because white liberals walk around and tell you that this is the right thing and you better get on or you're backwards, I think Black people have a right to their own thoughts, to their own beliefs without white interference, right? And so if Black pastors in Georgia know their parishioners and know their stance on that particular issue, I guess I'm concerned that, we have someone who is running who probably knows that will hurt him as a social issue with some Black churchgoers. I'm not going to sit here and drag Black people who are believers. I'm not a Christian anymore. I don't believe in any of the Abrahamic religions or anything like that. So I don't practice organized religion, but I'm not here to beat up on people who do, because I have plenty of people, obviously, in my family uh, who are believers. They're Muslim, they're Christians, some are Jewish in beliefs. So for people to sit up and act like Black people have to condone and sign on to everything from a white liberal perspective, um, I think is very elitist. And really it's anti-Black in a lot of ways from my perspective. So, you know, I want to see Black people, if you're going to participate in the system, make sure that the needs of your particular community are met. I'm going to be honest with you, and I'm an organizer. I know Black folks all across this country. I don't know any Black people, Black women in particular, particularly poor and working class Black women, that abortion is in the top 10 of something that they care about as a voting issue. Honestly, I don't. I'll tell you what they do care about, and what we talk about is education. They want their children to have a world-class education, pre-K through college. I'll tell you that certainly now during this pandemic, healthcare and access to good healthcare that doesn't cause them to have to file for bankruptcy is something that they care deeply about. I'll tell you that prisons and policing and anything around criminal justice is something that they care deeply about. I'll tell you that housing is something that Black folks, poor and working class Black folks, care deeply about. High quality jobs, right? Access to capital to start a business. Yeah, all y'all socialists and stuff, Black capitalism ain't gonna save us. Hey, we're not gonna have this conversation right now. I know plenty of Black people who are actually tired of working for other people, experiencing racism and everything else, who want access to capital to start their own business for something that they're creative about, for something that they're passionate about, right? Those are issues that when I talk to Black people, that they care about. These other issues that are mainly white, liberal, kind of categorized, things that are important to them, and they need the Black vote for that to make it something. Black people, please stop being somebody else's, stop basically allowing your votes to be pimped out for somebody else's issues. I'm not saying that we shouldn't care about other people's issues or that we shouldn't be allies or in solidarity, but solidarity can't be at the expense of your own livelihood. And I think that self-preservation is the first law of nature. My great uncle always said that to me. And I think clearly, historically, Black people have always been in solidarity with other oppressed people, right? Like we have always stood in solidarity. But I do think that it is not beneficial in this moment in time and in a very long time for us to be dealing with different political parties that are not meeting the needs of our community specifically and in general. It makes no sense. It makes absolutely no sense. So we have to be about supporting people who have a clear agenda specifically for Black folks, because we have specific issues. Everything disproportionately impacts Black people, but when it's time to vote, where's the stuff that's specifically for us? Kamala Harris got on the Breakfast Club and said, well, I'm not going to sit up here and say I'm going to do something specifically for Black folks. Excuse me? So, I just think that that's not okay. We can't continue to allow that. Then you're not getting my vote, right? Now, so I have been like this, I would say maybe the last 8 years, I have decided not to vote just to be voting. I use my vote very strategically. And I want to encourage all of us in greater numbers to do this. The other thing that I'll mention is the way that many of you have probably heard about the Biden leaked Zoom video that he had with civil rights leaders. And it looks like the NAACP was represented. NAACP Legal Defense and Education Fund was represented on the call. A couple of other organizations that I'm losing the name of them right now, but all the so-called civil rights groups and leaders. And he basically talked to them like he had no respect for him, quite honestly. He had no respect for him. I mean, he basically, there was one thing said where he was basically saying, listen, Black people are becoming least and least relevant. Y'all need to go work with the Hispanic community because they're the largest minority. That's what he said. And said, you need to fall back on all this police stuff, you know. And I'm going to tell you right now, I ain't doing a whole lot of stuff on executive orders. Even though Trump just got done basically running the country off of executive orders. And we spent 8 years under the Obama presidency listening to y'all tell us, well, he can't do that. He can't do nothing. He can't. Congress won't let him because they so mad because he's Black and beautiful. And people back then tried to tell us, yes, there are some things he can use an executive order for to change for us right now. But what Obama did was call our babies thugs when the rebellion jumped off in Baltimore. Y'all remember that when he got on national television and called our babies thugs? He didn't call the police the thugs, the ones that killed that young man on video. I just want us to love ourselves. Love ourselves enough to demand better. We do not have to accept crumbs or nothing at all. I've talked to some Black people who have just made it up in their mind that I know we're not going to get anything. I know we're going to have to take care of ourselves and make it on our own, but I still think we should vote. And I think we should vote for Democrats. There has been so much propaganda, so much socialization into Black people around this idea of voting, and they use the ancestors. Our ancestors died for a lot, right? Our ancestors actually died for the right to live, for the right to be human. They didn't just die for us to vote for Democrats for the rest of our lives. They didn't do that, y'all. Stop allowing people to tell you that our ancestors died for you to continue to vote for Democrats. No, they didn't. We got to love ourselves, y'all. We deserve better, right? And we have a right to demand better. While we still have the little bit of voting power that we have, because one thing that Joe Biden said in that leaked video is he's right? You know, the Hispanic community or Latinx community, they're continuing to grow. They're going to continue to have increased influence within their party. That's what he was saying. And that y'all need to learn how to work with them. Basically saying, don't come in here with all this Black stuff. You need to go and try to work with these other people and then come in here with some group stuff. Don't come in here with all this Black stuff. Even though, right? And I'm not going to even get into stolen election and all of that. I'm going to let somebody else talk about that. I haven't really spoken on that because I just feel like I don't have enough information. Although I will tell you that in 2004, this idea of the machines flipping votes, this idea of, you know, questions around voting integrity is not new. It is not new. I lived in Ohio in 2004, and there was a huge upset around the voting machines in Ohio. Back then, it was flipping votes to Republicans. Now, of course, you have the president and the Republicans saying that the votes were flipped for Joe Biden and all of this stuff. Again, I'm not going to get too deep off into that because I just don't have enough information. I mean, but I will tell you, it's not. I don't want people to think, oh no, that could never happen. Yeah, just go back to 2004 and specifically the Debo election machines and just Google that because it was Stephanie Tubb Jones who was representing the Ohio 11th Congressional District at that time, which is Cleveland and Akron, who actually contested that election on the House floor. Okay, so that this idea of switching votes and the voting machines being, switching votes and the tabulations being kind of screwy is not new. I'll leave that there. However, we cannot continue, in my opinion, to give our votes blanketly for Democrats and get excited about it when we have nothing, not one commitment from them to do something specifically for our community. If they can do things specifically for other groups, right? For women or white women or whatever, women is usually code word for white women. There are specific things outlined around sexual orientation, the LGBTQ plus community. For the Democrats, there's specific things outlined for families and communities who immigrate here. All of that is fine. And I think it's fine for Black people to be in solidarity with that. However, what is not okay is for Black people to be the largest subgroup of people in this country to give you their votes, but you don't have a specific agenda for us. And you don't support reparations for descendants of enslaved Africans. That's not okay. And I don't think that Black people should be voting for Democrats who are not supporting them and specifically supporting our community. And so I just want to encourage people to vote in your own best interest and become an interest voter and not a party line voter. Vote on interest. So for example, I did a video earlier saying, hey, let's get out there and support Nina Turner. She's running for Ohio 11th Congressional District, which is being vacated by Marcia Fudge, who, as you all know, has been nominated to be the, the Secretary of HUD by Biden. And so I'm 100% behind that sister. And you can go back and look at that video. It was posted on this page earlier. You can go back and look at that video for the details of why I support that sister. So she's a Democrat though, right? She's running as a Democrat. However, I'm supporting her for specific reasons because I know she has a specific economic agenda that will lift the community that I care about, which is poor and working class Black folks, right? Her agenda, and she supports reparations. So to me, that makes sense to vote for her. But you got this brother down in Georgia, Raphael Warnock, and whoever the other person is. I don't know that they've signed on to say that they support reparations, right? To me, that's a non-starter. I don't care. The Democrats can't scare me, right? Because I'm looking around my community and everything where y'all control, where the cities where we live is all effed up anyway. So, I mean, how much, you see what I'm saying? You all are actually not doing anything. Not only that, you are supporting white supremacist institutions like the mayor of Chicago, Mayor Lori Lightfoot, who tried to stop the video, the same thing that Rahm Emanuel did, of this sister being brutalized by the Chicago Police Department. She's a Black mayor. You got Mayor Muriel Bowser, who does the same thing in DC when it comes to MPD killing Black folks. She supports the police. She supports the institutions, right? So all this idea about representation and identity politics, if it's not connected to an economic agenda, if it's not connected to improving the life outcomes and material conditions of the masses of Black people, then we got to start saying no, family. We got to start saying no. And at the local level, there are opportunities for Black people to support independent or other candidates from the Green Party or whatever, libertarians or whatever. I don't know if you want to support libertarians or not, but there are other options, is what I'm saying, for people to support other candidates outside of the two-party system. And that, to me, is what I think needs to start happening. If the Democrats knew that they were going to start losing access to our votes, because if you look at the Hispanic community, right, and you look at how they vote, they just about split their votes. Sometimes they vote just a little bit more for Democrats, maybe around 60-40. Sometimes it's flipped, depending on what part of the Hispanic community, what ethnicity is. We know Cubans support Republicans 70 or 80% of the time, right? So no other community supports Democrats in the same way that we do 90% of the time, 95, 98% of the time. No other community does that. So there is a significant power as far as a block. If we can start peeling off some of that support and these Democrats start actually losing races, they will actually start courting us the same way that they court other communities. Just start having a strategy around the vote, family, instead of just voting for representation or just voting for the sake of just voting. And I'll wrap that up, from here. But I had to talk about those few issues in terms of, the black pastors in Georgia, asking Raphael Warnock to pull back on that support around abortion and saying that would hurt him among some of the congregations. Lori Lightfoot, who tried to stop the video from being shown of a black woman being brutalized by CPD. So here you have a black woman, right? Oh, and she's LGBT. So extra, right? Wonderful history been made. That's great. However, she's certainly still deferential to the system of white supremacy and holding up those institutions. And finally, I'll leave y'all with some suggested readings, things that have informed how I view the world or my worldview. And certainly I encourage people to read Dr. Amos Wilson. His magnum opus, Blueprint for Black Power, is everything that we need in that book in order to build the kind of power that we need to survive and thrive, right? I want to encourage people also to check out the work of Dr. Jared Ball and Dr. Tommy J. Curry. And also, finally, before I wrap up this video, be sure y'all come back here tomorrow night at 8 p.m. There's going to be a lively discussion on the ADOS movement. I believe it stands for American Descendants of Slavery, which was co-founded, I think, by Yvette Carnell and Antonio Moore. And then we'll have Brother Dwayne Dieterville out of Oakland coming in as well, and Maxwell Little coming in. And there will be a lively discussion, respectful discussion about politics, about the politics of ADOS and Pan-Africanism. I love Black people. Certainly, I'm a descendant of enslaved Africans here in the United States, so I'm sympathetic a lot to the ADOS movement. However, I certainly identify as a Pan-African nationalist, Black nationalist, and so I have solidarity with Africans in the United States and the world over, all over the world. But what I'll say I appreciate about, I believe what ADOS was attempting was to disaggregate the data and really hone in on what's happening economically to descendants of enslaved Africans in this country. And so I won't speak too much on it, but certainly as a Pan-Africanist, I wanted to be able to bring two people together that I respect, to have a family discussion is what I'm calling it. And so hopefully you all will come and be a part of that. I'm sure it's going to be live. It's going to be all the way live because, we see some of the debates, unfortunately, harmful kind of back and forth we see on Twitter sometime. But anyway, make sure you all come back, like and share the video, encourage others to come and subscribe so they can have access to this good content and have access to some of the other folks that I'll be bringing in. And yeah, I have some pretty powerful guests that's coming up. So anyway, thanks for listening to me tonight. I had to get that off my chest. As always, I appreciate and love you all. Take good care. Peace.